Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio
and Urban Family Talk.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media
and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Good evening. Thank you for tuning into the Hamilton Corner as you are on your way to the weekend, baby. You're listening to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And as you are situating yourself, making the mental transition to move into your weekend displays of faithfulness to our Lord, I'm so glad you allowed me to join you on that transition. We have a full show for you today. I'm excited. You probably can tell by my little dancing in the beginning of the program if you're watching the show on the live streams. But it's an exciting day to be alive, contrary to what may seemingly be the popular opinion. Though the darkness mounts, man, God has ordained us for this moment. We have an opportunity in this moment, in this time, in this era, in this season, where darkness appears to be consuming the people in our country in particular and around the world. God has given us the opportunity, those of us who have placed our trust in him for eternal salvation, we have an opportunity to serve as his ambassadors. So we want to make sure that we make full proof of the opportunity he's given us. We will begin the program, as is our custom, by turning to the Word of God. And I'm just going to tell you guys, I've been singing. If you hang around me in the office, you'll hear me singing. There's a lady, a coworker of mine whose desk is near my office, and she hears me singing all the time. And I picked that up from my pastor in New Orleans. Man, I would hang around him, and he would sing all the time, always having a song in his heart. And man, as I continued to grow in the Lord, I found myself having a song in my heart. I'm humming, I'm singing, but God is good. And as you are making your way, many of you, from your part-time jobs to your full-time jobs, or some of you may still be on your part-time jobs right now, we want to take a few moments and turn to Psalm 103, which is a Psalm of David, and just have a worship-filled reflection on who God really is. So Psalm 103, verses 1 through 7 in this Psalm of David is where we're going to start with today's program. And I'll read it, and then I'll come back and make some comments. So here we go. Verse 1, Psalm 103, 1. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy. Oh, glory to God. Who satisfies you with good, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord works righteousness and justice for all who are oppressed. He made known his ways to Moses, his acts to the people of Israel. One of the things I remember right now, the first time I read the Bible for myself, from Genesis to Revelation, and I remember coming across scripture and some of the stuff that I've been taught, I realized, that's not what the Bible says. Like, for example, Jonah and the whale. It doesn't say nothing about a whale. Jonah was in the fish. It was a big fish. But, children's ministry, I was taught it was a whale. That was one of the revelations I came to. But the other thing that I enjoyed discovering is that we sang worship songs, right? And when I'd come across particular scriptural passages, I would see, man, this song comes straight out of the Bible. Man, that was an amazing discovery for me. Like this one, and some of you probably already know, I've been singing it all morning. I will bless the Lord, oh my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Man, that song blessed me. And when I realized that came straight out of the Bible, it took my worship to another place with the Lord. It also reminds me, I'll just, have a share with you guys some of the stories. You know, we like to talk about our highlights. We don't talk about the lowlights so often. But I remember when I was in Bible school, and, you know, I began to study theology and all of these things. Well, we had chapel every week, twice a week, actually. Started off Wednesdays and Fridays, and then it was Mondays and Wednesdays. So church on Sunday, then chapel on Monday and Wednesdays. Yeah. But at chapel, they used to sing hymns. Now, I'll just, you know, candid, transparent moment. My church background did not include many hymns. Okay, it didn't include lots of hymns. And so when I first got exposed to the singing of hymns, I'm going to tell you, this is a candid moment, transparent moment. I didn't like them. And it had nothing to do with the content. In fact, it was the style of music turned me off. So I would just tune out when the hymns were played. And man, as is his custom, this is why I say the Lord loves you so much, he won't allow you to continue in error. The Lord loved me so much, he checked me in my foolishness. The Lord checked me and said, Abe, wait a minute, when you gather for worship, who are you worshiping? Well, I said, well, Lord, I'm gathering to worship you. He says, well, if you're gathering to worship me, it shouldn't matter to you the genre of music that's played or the style of music that's played if you are there to worship me. If this is for me, man, if they pull out a banjo, if it's glorifying me, you should want to be a part of that. And man, that completely revolutionized my approach to worship and song when I began to realize, wait a minute, the worship isn't meant to suit me or to suit my fancy. It's to glorify my King. And so after that revelation and the Lord corrected my ignorance, guess what happened to me? I started to listen to the hymns and to learn the hymns and to read the hymns, so much so to where my absolute favorite worship songs now are the hymns. I remember the first thing my wife realized when I was pursuing her and we first got married, my wife discovered that this is the time we had CD players in the car, right? Now, how many people use CDs now? Not as many. But the CDs that were at the top of my collection in my cars was a thick 5-set discs, a set of 5 discs, all full of hymns. And my wife said, Abe, I didn't pick you to be the type of guy to be jamming out in your car to hymns. And so she learned that, you know, my favorite worship music has become hymns. And it's not because of the musical style or whatever, but because of the richness, the theological richness of the lyrics. Oh, man, when I get to listen to the hymns, you see clearly that these are hymns that are written to convey the overwhelming, all-consuming, glorious nature of our God. This isn't a bunch of people getting together in some maybe smoke-filled room trying to come up with something for the latest Grammys, trying to get a Dove Award out of this one. No, this came from people who had been processed in following the Lord. And so, man, I love those hymns. Man, I took up all the time talking about this experience. Well, hopefully this is helping someone that is listening. Man, when it's time to worship, the style of music shouldn't govern you. It should be the content of the lyrics and the object of the worship. Not to say style isn't important, but I'll say it's not as important. And what I found in my own experience is as I got consumed in the object of my worship and the lyrics provided for me an opportunity to engage fully in it, man, hymns became my favorite. But getting back to the text, man, I've talked so much. Let me try to hurry up. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. That's the core of worship. When you transition from just being a song singer and a worshiper, you first realize that worship is a lifestyle. Worshiping in song is just an iteration of worship. But when worship is a lifestyle, singing is one aspect of worshiping with all that is within you. And understanding that the worship is to be with all that is within you, man, it carries over into every aspect of your life. The way I do this show, I want to worship the Lord. The way I change my tires, I want to worship the Lord. The way I speak to my wife, I want to worship the Lord. The way I serve my children, I want to worship the Lord. I want every aspect of everything that I touch to be littered with the aroma of the presence of God. Because as a result of becoming a worshiper, I don't want anything or any occasion to present the opportunity for there to be a severance, for there to be a separation or a division between my mind being filled with thoughts of my King. Everything I want to carry the aroma of his presence. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, oh God. Oh God, who forgives all your iniquity. Oh my goodness. Do you know what it's like to have the power of sin broken over your lives? Where the Lord not only delivers you from the stain of sin, but he also delivers you from the guilt and the shame of it, to where he transforms your mindset and even your desires, to where the things you used to want, you don't even want anymore. Oh, when we would consider that and set our mind on this reality, it provokes worship inside of us. Who redeems your life from the pit. And the healing of your diseases is, yes, includes physical healing, but also applies to the moral condition of our lifestyles and the state of our souls. Glory be to our King who redeems your life from the pit and crowns you with steadfast love and mercy and satisfies you with good. I've described it before. It's like oceans. And this is one of the things I reflected on the first time I went on a cruise, seeing how waves just continue and continue. That's what it's like in following the Lord, to where his grace just flows like waves over and over and over again. And this is the point I want to bring out. Man, I'm getting close to the end of this time. Where it says, he made known his ways to Moses and his acts to the people of Israel. Brothers and sisters, you realize there's a difference between knowing, excuse me, had to sneeze, knowing the ways of God as opposed to being present for his actions. There is a distinction in intimacy there that David is identifying, to where the Lord said that he communed and conversed with Moses face to face as a man converses with another man. But he made known his acts to the people. As we engage in this lifestyle of worship that flows over into our singing songs of worship to the Lord. As an aside, I'll say this now. The reality is, when we gather for worship, it really shouldn't be the responsibility of the person leading us in songs to cheerlead us into a place where we're willing to worship. The reality is, when we gather, it really should be a continuation of what we engage in between the corporate gatherings of the local assemblies. I'll say it another way. If it's a struggle for you to worship the Lord when you gather with the saints, it's probably because you are not worshiping him privately in your homes. The times, let me say it this way, singing songs and singing worship to the Lord shouldn't be limited to the corporate gathering. Say it that way. When we gather together, it really should be an augmentation of what we do on a regular basis, if we are followers of the way. Now, having said that, getting back to Moses and the people of Israel, Moses was the man that God conferred with, spoke with face to face. Where the Bible, David is saying that the Lord made known his ways to Moses. That means he's revealing his personality traits, his characteristics, and interpersonal communion and communication with Moses, whereas Moses has the intimate union, kind of like the backstage passes. The rest of the Israelites only get to see the displays, the demonstrations, the acts. And my encouragement to you is, as we are engaging in this lifestyle of worship, to not settle to just be a front row spectator for what God does, but to move on into the place where we pursue him, where we say, Lord, I want to know your ways. I want to know your ways. I want to know the mind of my Father, to move past simply being an onlooker to where we move into the depths of personal communion and relationship with the King. I'm telling you, it's glorious from this place of intimacy.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And I'm excited to have on the program with me right now the reigning Miss Mississippi, crowned so in June of this year, Miss Asya Branch. And she is slated to compete on September 9th in the Miss America pageant. Now, I know some of you are saying that, wait a minute, Abraham, how does she get connected to the corner? Well, it's a cool story. I'll tell you as briefly as I can. My producer, y'all know Jeff Reed, his wife, Ann Reed, is a writer for the AFA Journal. And she's also involved in a prison ministry to women who are incarcerated called Day One. The purpose of the Day One ministry is to minister to women while they're in prison so that they can continue upon their release from prison in a life that is God glorifying and ultimately will enable them to cut the cycle of recidivism. People that are released from prison that go back into prison. And in that process, Ann and her friend Missy, who are involved in the Day One ministry, got an interesting request from the local sheriff of the jail, who said, well, I want you, Missy and Ann, to allow a guest to come in and speak to the women in the Day One ministry. And that guest was my guest on the program right now, Miss Asya Branch. So, Asya, thank you for joining me on the program today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, now I want to jump right into the thick of the story, because right now people's minds are spinning. A beauty queen, Miss Mississippi, competing in the Miss America pageant, involved in a prison outreach? Why were you drawn to participate in this particular engagement with the women in this prison, in this jail?
My father has been incarcerated for half of my life, and I always want to make a difference. And my family went through a lot of financial and emotional distress and a lot of different things following his incarceration. But I wanted to speak to parents about the impact they can have on their children. Luckily for me, I was able to keep a strong connection with my father, and we communicate and we have a strong relationship, but that's not the case for everyone. And so I felt as though if I were able to share my perspective with parents that are in jail, then we would be able to mend some of these relationships and have a more positive outlook on things.
Now that is amazing, because in reading your profile, it shows that your platform, platform is to empower children of incarcerated parents. Now, we have the statistics as they're reported. 1 in 28 children currently have a parent behind bars, and about 1 in 14 children have been separated from a parent due to incarceration at some point. And researchers say those numbers are actually a lot higher than that, because most children don't report the fact that they have parents that are incarcerated because of the social stigma surrounding that. Do you have any can you identify with that? Those who, for whatever some reason, would be reluctant to share publicly that
Absolutely.
Their parent may be incarcerated?
That was something I dealt with for several years throughout grade school. Because it's just viewed so negatively, and people look at you differently when they know that. And so it's just something that kids tend to cover up because they want to continue living their normal lives without people judging them for a circumstance that's completely out of their control.
And as Ann conveyed it in this article, and this is a wonderful story, you can go to afajournal.org, or you can go to afa.net/thestand. I'm sorry, it's not in the journal. It's afa.net/thestand, and you can look up the story. The title is Miss Mississippi's Purpose Found in Jail. And she referred to the fact that sometimes children of incarcerated parents are treated as if they are the ones who have committed crimes.
Yes.
And that clearly is something that is unfair, because if the parent is involved in criminality that results in their incarceration, that has nothing to do with the children.
Exactly, but it's just the way that society views things. You know, you hear jail and you think negatively instantly, and I kind of want to change that perspective, because when we see news stories and someone's being put in jail, how often do people think, oh, what's happening to their family? That doesn't happen, but it affects the family traumatically. That's
a great point. So in your own story, and I even saw in your profile, you refer to your dad as your hero, even though
Absolutely.
He was incarcerated over half of your life. And is he still incarcerated currently?
He is.
And yet you refer to him as your hero. How were you able to maintain that bond with your father while he's incarcerated?
My father and I have always been very close, and he's given me a lot of the qualities and characteristics that I have that has allowed me to get through these tough situations. And even though he's been incarcerated for half of my life, he's still continued to be a supporter and a motivator and an encourager for me. And I'm so grateful for that, because I know not everyone keeps that connection. Not everyone has that connection to begin with. And he's still an incredible man, and he's definitely helped shape me into who I am today.
Now that's amazing. Now I want to talk a little bit about your visit in the local jail when Missy was present. And I'm going to read a little bit from Ann's article. She says, quote, "When Asia lovingly challenged the women to commit to maintaining a relationship with their children while incarcerated, one inmate couldn't contain herself. She yelled out, 'How can we do that? We ain't got no paper, no envelopes, no stamps, or no money on our books.'" What was that experience like? Because there you are in a jail setting talking to women who clearly, most of them, if not all of them, have children at home, and you're lovingly challenging them not to allow their incarceration, to keep them from building and maintaining relationships with their own children, and this one inmate just yells out. What was that experience like?
Well, I went in there and I shared my story, and I'm able to share both from my perspective as a child of an incarcerated parent, as well as, my father being incarcerated and, the impact it's had on him. And so unknowingly, I'm looking back at it now, but I'm sure they were envisioning me as their child, and how I've lived my life with an incarcerated parent. And so being able to share with them how I was lucky enough to keep this relationship with my father and how it's benefited me, keeping that connection and how important that is for a child. I told them, I said, if you're not motivating them and pushing them to be their best, who is? And so my goal is also to end the generational cycle of incarceration. And so when she spoke out that way, I understood completely, because there's been times where we haven't been able to put money on my father's books, so that's something I could relate to, and I understood completely. And so that's where the Love Letters program began, to where we supply stamps and stationery to the inmates that they're able to send letters to their children to form or keep that connection.
And again, that is absolutely amazing, because here you are at this point, you are standing there literally as a representation. And as you said, I'm sure every one of those women saw in you their own children, really their own children, crying out to them saying, please don't forget about me. And then that plea being contrasted with the reality, as the one inmate said, we don't have the resources, the stamps, the envelopes, the other things to maintain that relationship. So then you have Missy and the Day One ministry people who are there, who see, here's a need where we can step in. So would you tell the listeners a little bit about the Love Letters program and how the Day One ministry was able to step in and help to provide stamps and envelopes and things of that nature to allow the inmates to maintain their relationships with their children?
Yeah, that was an incredible moment, because that's not something people often think about. Like, well, why isn't she calling her kid? Why isn't she doing this? Why isn't she doing that? But you have to have those resources available. And they said, too, that, people can't put money on their books because they're spending the money that they have taking care of their children for them. So that's something that has to be considered. So when these supplies are given, it makes a world of a difference. And then that child, of course, doesn't feel so alone, and they don't feel like they've been forgotten or abandoned by their parents when they're finally getting these letters. And I believe over 300 letters have been sent out from the Lee County Jail.
Yes, that is the numbers that I have. And there also was a piece where you even, the reigning Miss Mississippi, got permission from some of the inmates for you to even write letters to their children. How has that unfolded, and what type of impact do you think that's had so far?
At first, I was starting to write the letters. Where do I begin here? But I just had to think, I have their ages, I have their genders, I kind of have an idea of who I'm writing to, but it's just my goal to be an encourager and show them that their life circumstances don't have to define their future, that they can make the most of what they're given. And as long as they're willing to work hard and be dedicated to what they're trying to achieve, anything is possible. I went through an awful lot, yet I never lost sight of my dreams and my goals. And I have my father to thank for that, for pushing me to never give up. But not everyone has that. And so I want to be that motivator and that encourager for all of these children. Not that I know specifically what each one of them is going through, but I know it's not always easy. And when you have that extra boost, that extra person there to just kind of encourage you along the journey, it makes a world of a difference.
Wow, that is amazing story. Asya, thank you so much for joining me on the program today. And I know that, as we stated in the beginning of the program, you are competing in the Miss America pageant in September. But I saw again in your profile, your goals are to complete your bachelor's degree and to get your Juris Doctor degree in law after that. So I wish you all the best in that endeavor. I don't know if you know this, but I'm an attorney as well. So I definitely, so I wish you all the best when passing your LSAT and, getting into law school and all of those things.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Asya Branch, ladies and gentlemen, this is an amazing thing because, if you listen to the program, you probably already know that I don't watch pageants. I don't follow pageants. And then you have the thing that really would probably require many of you, as you're listening to this, to maybe check your own bias when you think, this is just a pageant girl, where this young lady, who's a 20-year-old college student, is thinking about more than herself. And when the initial thought of pageant girls, most people with high heels and tiaras, where this young lady who is her own life story includes her father being incarcerated and is still incarcerated. Yet she's able to maintain a relationship with her father, and because she's benefited from that, which speaks, one, to the power of the power of a father in the lives of their children, even from prison. He was able to shape and influence his daughter where she declares him to be her hero. That in and of itself is powerful. But then you have the kind of mind switch that has to happen. See, wait a minute. This is an intelligent young lady. She's going to school. She wants to go to law school. And along the way, she wants to empower children of incarcerated parents. I mean, that is a very real issue where you have very often when adults go to prison, where it is easy how you can see how their children are often left to be afterthoughts, which is also an encouragement and even a challenge. And I did prison ministry for, I don't remember how long. And many of you that are listening, you're involved in prison ministry or involved in ministries of different sorts. Well, to put this on your radar, to think about what about the children and to encourage the incarcerated adults to maintain a relationship with their children. This was just an amazing story. And so this is one of those things where I tell you guys, J Squared is amazing. I don't know if this story would have came on my radar if it wasn't for Ann and Jeff Reed. So I'm grateful for them presenting this story and allowing me to offer it to you so that when we think about all of these things, adults being incarcerated and considering their parents, and even the thought process of not contributing to the negative effect of parents being incarcerated, not contributing to the negative effects that it has on their children. Because again, the children didn't do anything wrong. The children aren't responsible for their parents' criminal activity. So I thought that was a good reminder for all of us when we consider. And then as well, for me now, again, I don't watch beauty pageants. I'm not a supporter of them. I'm not at all. But I do think it's important not to put people in boxes in totality, to allow people to show you who they are. And I think it's commendable what Asya Branch is doing, using her own background, her own life experiences to be a source of encouragement to other people, which again is a lesson for us. So all too often we find people who kind of, as those on, I'm coming up on the rough side of the mountain. Some people who came up on the rough side of the mountain, sometimes when you come into faith in Jesus Christ, we will lament our route, lament the trajectory that we walked on, not realizing that, man, God can take what he brought you through to be a source of inspiration and encouragement, and to be a source of evangelism, quite frankly, to other people. I say this all the time. That's why God made us a body. He doesn't want every member of the body to be the exact same. If all members of the body were toes, where would the sense of smell be? Where would the sense of sight be? Where would the sense of touch and taste be? Right? And if all of the members of the body were eyes, where would the sense of feeling be? No, we all have our roles to play within the body of Christ. And so Asya Branch's story is one that we can use to encourage ourselves to see what would God want to use from my history, from my background, to be a source of healing and a source of inspiration and most importantly, a source of evangelism to those who are around us. It's great, the great encouragement. Asya Branch, very, very interesting interview. We have a lot more when we come back on the other side of the break. I'm going to present to you, how shall I talk about this? What do you do when you have a left-wing journalist who feels that they are empowered to insult a woman because she doesn't maintain the worldview that this left-wing writer thinks she should have because of her skin color? You definitely don't want to miss that. You're listening to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Stay close because we're going to go deeper on the other side of the break.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and 1-minute commentaries are available at afr.net and urbanfamilytalk.com. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I'd like to address the lady who had spoken, the Danish lady who had spoken about comparing African women not having the right to choose what to do with her body and it being colonization. It's actually quite amazing how you were able to kind of twist that into shape, to that thought. But I must say this to you. I am from a tribe called the Igbo tribe in Nigeria. If I tried to translate in my native tongue what it means for a woman to choose what to do with her body, I couldn't. Most of the African native languages don't even have a way of phrasing abortion to mean anything good. Now, as communities of people and as societies, where it actually then becomes colonization, a neo-colonization, is that people from the Western world come to Africa and try to give us these kinds of language that we could never translate into our native tongue. They tell us that it actually can mean something for a woman to do something with her body, which isn't really morally bad. But anyway, the first thing that we have to think of and remember is that as communities, which was one thing I highlighted right at the beginning, culturally, most of the African communities actually believe, by tradition, by their cultural standards, that abortion is a direct attack on human life. So for anybody to convince a woman that abortion is good, So for anybody to be able to convince any woman in Africa that abortion is actually a good thing and can be a good thing, you first of all have to tell her that what her parents and her grandparents and her ancestors taught her is actually wrong. You're going to have to tell her that they have always been wrong in their thinking, and that, madam, is colonization.
Well, welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And that was the voice of a pro-life warrior who just so happens to be African in her descent, Nigerian in her nation of origin, of the Igbo tribe, which we're going to get to in a little bit here. And she was speaking there at a United Nations conference. And she responded to a Swedish woman talking about colonization and how it was absolutely necessary to get abortion to become embraced in African nations. And Miss Ekeocha, I didn't say her full name, Obianuju Ekeocha, responded by saying, listen, in most African, all African languages, they don't even have the verbiage in their native tongues to refer to killing babies as anything as positive. And so she's basically saying that if you want to talk about colonization, in order for you to convince an African woman that abortion is positive, you would have to get her to completely embrace the upending of her cultural heritage. You would have to get the African woman to embrace the notion that her mother and grandmother and all of our ancestors thinking on the issue of killing babies in the womb as being wrong. And Mr. Ekeocha said, if you want to talk about colonization, that is colonization. Now, why do I bring all of that up? I'm so glad you asked. Now, many of you remember the raspy voice, irritating voice, Michelle Wolf from the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where she viciously and very disgustingly attacked Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is, I have to tell you, my favorite press secretary in my lifetime. I mean, have you ever heard a better press secretary than Sarah Huckabee Sanders? I mean, the woman is a force of nature. She really is. I am enjoying the job that Sarah Huckabee Sanders is doing. Well, Michelle Wolf savaged Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Kellyanne Conway and pretty much all of the women in the White House who are a part of President Trump's administration, which, by the way, I guess feminism is not as feminist as they want it to be, right? I mean, if you want to be feminist, you got to have a certain ideology. Or some say it this way, if you're going to be celebrated by people who call themselves feminists, they only celebrate certain ideologies. So I guess it doesn't have as much to do with actually being a woman as they wanted it to seem initially. That's a whole nother conversation for another time. Well, following the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Netflix gave Michelle Wolf her own Netflix series. It was kind of a talk show style, similar to the daily, I forgot the name of the show, the Comedy Central shows. I can't remember. Jon Stewart used to have it, and some of those other people there. But the show was similar to that. And on one of the more recent episodes of that show, and I played some audio from the program on the Hamilton Corner, where Michelle Wolf is celebrating, abortion and dresses up in patriotic garb and is playing Grand Old Flag and other things, basically trying to convey that killing babies is as American as apple pie. Well, guess what? People didn't watch the show on Netflix very much. And Michelle Wolf's show was canceled by Netflix. Can you believe it? Netflix canceled her show. So following the cancellation of the show, Obianuju Ekeocha, the African pro-life warrior, the Nigerian pro-life warrior, she tweeted out, here it is. Quote, "This tweet may age like wine. So many of us hated that hashtag WHCD, meaning White House Correspondents' Dinner speech. We lamented and complained about it, but at Netflix didn't care. So they signed her up anyway," referring to Michelle Wolf. The tweet goes on. "And now they are having to cancel within a few months," end quote. And then Obianuju Ekeocha tweeted like an emoji with the shrugged shoulders, like, sorry, not sorry, kind of thing, right? This prompted a response from, and this is why I'm setting all of this up, this prompted a response from a left-wing writer by the name of Benjamin O'Keefe. You want to see what this guy tweeted in response to Miss Ekeocha? Benjamin O'Keefe tweeted in response to Obianuju Ekeocha's tweet concerning her lack of sorry for Michelle Wolf's show being canceled. Benjamin O'Keefe tweeted, quote, "Them canceling the show had nothing to do with conservatives' dislike for her. It has to do with trying to figure out the weekly talk show format. Also, you seem like a joke of a black person," end quote. Well, of course, he's going to go there. Because, of course, being, as he says, a quote-unquote black person, it requires you to think a certain way. In order to really be a quote-unquote black person, you have to have certain ideas. And if you don't have those ideas, then you are no longer black. Possibly why they did not initially include Justice Clarence Thomas in the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. But they certainly had an exhibit for Colin Kaepernick. Benjamin O'Keefe said Obianuju Ekeocha was a, quote, joke of a black person, end quote. Okay. He probably shouldn't have done that. And I wanted to share the audio to give you a kind of an idea of what type of flavor my neighbor, Miss Ekeocha, is rolling with when showing you how she savaged that, how she lovingly and gently dismantled the Swedish woman at the United Nations. Look what Obianuju Ekeocha tweeted in response to Benjamin O'Keefe. Are y'all ready for this? In response, she says, quote, I was born in Nigeria. I'm the daughter of the Igbo tribe. I can talk for hours in my native language about the traditions of my people. When I die, I will be buried beside my ancestors in the land passed down for generations, Benjamin. I'm sorry. When I die, I will be buried beside my ancestors in the land passed down for generations. Benjamin, what is your tribe? End quote. Oh, Lord. This is one of those classic examples when your Twitter fingers outpace your ability to handle the response. He probably shouldn't have done that. He called, and this is Miss Ekeocha responding herself. He referred to a native Nigerian woman of the Igbo tribe as a joke of a, quote, black person, end quote. Mm-hmm. And that was her response. Do I really have to do this? How long are we going to continue with this, right? Where black is no longer, the term black is no longer a description of skin color. It's not. It's not. Because you have people like this fool, Benjamin O'Keefe, saying that she's a joke of a black person because she's pro-life. And you have the consistent refrain, and, you know, if you want to be honest, most of this kind of foolishness comes from people who share the same skin color. Most of it. Because a lot of people who don't share the same skin color are a bit too skittish to even say stuff like this. How long are we going to continue to require people to maintain certain ideologies in order to be considered authentically ethnic? It's sad, folks. It's sad. And frankly, I think the people are tired of it. That's why you have reports like the Rasmussen report last week that showed that 36% of people whose skin color is melanated like mine, their pigment is like mine, or like Uncle Lonnie says, those with the darker paint job, 36% of those who responded to the poll support President Trump's job performance. And you know what? I think the number actually is probably higher. They may not say it publicly, but it's probably higher. Very similar to a lot of people supported President Trump in 2016, but they weren't responding to the polls because of stuff like this. This Benjamin O'Keefe fellow basically revoking this Nigerian woman's black card because she supports life. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. At the time when anybody who pays attention, you know that the higher percentage of babies that are being aborted are darker skinned babies. It's not exclusively darker skinned babies being aborted, but the percentage, the proportionality of those that are being aborted are darker skinned babies, where nearly 80% of Planned Parenthood murder mills are in inner city communities. Who's really the joke? I mean, come on. And I'm tired of this. There is no other ethnicity in our country where you walk up to a person and you assume that they have certain beliefs and ideals about life. I mean, what happened to the whole thing about judging people by the content of their character as opposed to their skin color? I've shared the story before. I can't tell you how many times people walk up to me and immediately assume that I was an Obama supporter just because of what I look like. And it's just sad, as if diversity of opinion applies to every ethnicity except those of us with darker skin. I'm just tired of it, man. I'm tired of it. And we have the voting results to show it routinely. 90+% of people who look like me vote for the Democrat Party. Yet in the overwhelm, almost exclusively, the large cities in our country that are suffering the worst conditions are routinely dominated and run for decades and centuries in some instances, at least a century in some instances, by one party. It's got to end. And this is not a plea to make anybody Republicans. And if you listen to the show, you know I lament and condemn Republicrats all day long. You know, if the people that were Republicans, if they actually lived according to and governed according to their platform, I might be a Republican. But because the Republicans have demonstrated themselves, generally speaking, at the national party level, as being untrustworthy to maintain fidelity to the platform, you have people that are like me that feel like I don't fit neatly in any box. And so you have this guy, and it's amazing to me. You get some of the most virulent insults when you don't maintain, the political party line. Come on. And it's insulting, quite frankly. It's insulting. I'll play a little bit more audio for you. So many of you are familiar with the whole shout your abortion movement while we're on this topic. If you would, Jeff, do we have the shout your abortion clip available?
No, but I can get it.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it because we don't have as much time to go. Here's one of these things again that I continue to blow the horn about. Now I know even when after Oprah Winfrey gave her speech, I think it was an Oscar speech or a Golden Globe speech, whatever it was, and you had all of these people clamoring for Oprah to be president, I just took the time to remind people about Oprah's pagan spirituality. Because I know there are lots of people who go to church who love Oprah. I mean, her magazine, the O Magazine, has 10 million subscribers. Well, the July 8, 2018 issue of the Oprah Winfrey Magazine, which carries her namesake, it included a feature, a glowing feature and profile of Amelia Bono. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. And Amelia Bono is the woman who coined the hashtag shout your abortion, because her objective was to try to eliminate the stigma surrounding killing babies. See, one of the things that I try to do, I probably need to do a better job, is I'm not going to use the euphemistic term abortion. You're killing babies. Using that phrase is an attempt to sterilize and to dehumanize the fact that you are killing babies. Well, Oprah is celebrating this hashtag shout your abortion. Bono says that she had no shame or regret ending her unplanned pregnancy. Why don't you call it what it is? Ending the life of the child growing in your womb. She said, on some level, I'd internalized the stigma, though I honestly wasn't ashamed. Then why hide? Why hide is what Bono said. So I just wanted you to know that some of you who still love Oprah, celebrate the O Magazine and all of that, I just want you to know that Oprah is down with the hashtag shout your abortion movement. She's providing a platform and support for a woman who wants to celebrate the killing of an innocent child. Man, we got to get to the place in the body of Christ where we are not enamored with celebrity, that we are enamored solely by God and His Word.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American